Comfort rarely ruins your potential in one obvious move. It shrinks the range of things you're willing to try until your life fits neatly inside what you already know you can handle. Potential isn't hidden talent waiting to be found. It's unused capacity. And capacity only becomes real when you put it under some load. Nassim Taleb's point is blunt. Systems learn from stress, error, and exposure, not from perfect protection. So we're going to separate recovery from false comfort, then build stress that teaches you something without turning your life into a poorly planned disaster. Fragility means small shocks cause more damage than they should. A fragile system needs conditions to stay predictable, because even a minor change can throw it off course. You can see this in your own work. An unexpected email changes your whole day. A bit of criticism makes you pull a project back into private. One awkward meeting leaves you replaying every word instead of doing the next task. That response doesn't mean you're weak. It means the system around you has trained for smooth conditions, and smooth conditions don't teach you much about what happens when the surface changes. Rest is not the problem. Recovery restores capacity after effort, and without it you stop learning because you're too depleted to take in feedback or return to the task. Constant insulation is different. That is when you remove every rough edge before you've built the ability to deal with it. So the part of you that could adapt never gets a reason to come online. Taleb uses the word antifragile for systems that gain from some disorder. Not systems that enjoy damage. Not systems that survive anything through sheer force of will. Systems that improve when they face manageable variation, feedback, and pressure. Your body works this way within limits. You don't become stronger by avoiding every load. You apply a load you can recover from, your body adapts, and the next load stops feeling like an emergency. The same pattern shows up in work that exposes you. The first time you publish something unfinished, pitch an idea before it feels complete, or ask for a hard piece of feedback, your threat response tends to spike. The event itself may be ordinary. Your system treats it as unusual because it has no recent proof that you can handle it. Picture a circuit that never goes through a load test. It can look clean on the bench, every component in place, no smoke, no noise, and lots of confidence from the person who built it. Then real demand arrives, and a weak connection fails. The failure didn't begin at that moment. The load merely exposed the fault that stayed hidden while everything remained easy. That is what false comfort does to potential. It lets you mistake lack of testing for stability. You avoid the hard conversation because you want to keep the peace. You keep revising the draft because it isn't ready yet. You leave 3 career paths open because closing 2 feels irresponsible. Each choice lowers discomfort in the moment, but it also keeps you from learning what you can survive, repair, or improve. Preparation can be useful, but preparation without exposure becomes a shelter for uncertainty, where you keep moving objects around and call it progress because the desk looks busy. The cost builds quietly. Your tolerance for risk gets smaller because you keep treating normal uncertainty as a signal to retreat. More situations trigger threat because you haven't given your system enough evidence that the threat ends and you remain intact. Then planning expands to fill the space where action should have created feedback. You research longer. You build a cleaner system. You switch tools. Nothing ships, but the planning feels responsible, which is a fairly efficient way to avoid finding out. Taleb's harsh point is that removing every downside also removes the information inside the downside. A rejected pitch tells you where the pitch failed. A tense conversation tells you what needs to change. A public attempt gives you evidence that you can take a hit without losing your ability to continue. You don't need to see chaos. You need to stop treating all friction as a design flaw. Comfort becomes a cage when it stops being a place to recover and becomes the rule that decides what you're allowed to attempt. The answer isn't to turn your life into a stress test with no off switch. Random suffering doesn't train you. It mostly burns time, drains attention, and gives you a new problem to manage. Useful discomfort has a clear shape. You choose it. It creates feedback, and you can return to normal function after it ends. If the stress only damages your sleep, health, or ability to show up tomorrow, it has crossed the line from exposure into self-sabotage. Start with a minimum viable exposure. Pick the smallest action that puts something real at stake, where another private rehearsal would let you avoid the same risk for one more day. If you keep rewriting a proposal, send the rough version to the person whose answer you need. If you've researched a new role for months, apply for one role with a closing date. If you avoid hard talks, ask for 15 minutes and name the one issue you've kept vague. Keep the scope small. The point isn't to prove that you're fearless. The point is to give your system a clean piece of evidence. Discomfort showed up, you acted anyway, and the situation became more knowable. Next, set a decision gate before you begin. A decision gate is one condition that moves the work forward, even when your brain later produces a very polished argument for staying put. For a draft, the gate might be, when the first full version exists, I send it to one reader. For a job search, it might be, when I find a role that meets these 3 written criteria, I apply within 24 hours. You choose the rule while you're calm, because the version of you staring at a blank email will suddenly discover a deep concern about font choice. Bound the downside as well. Give the exposure a fixed time, a fixed scope, and a cost you can absorb without turning one attempt into a crisis. You aren't betting your whole career on a single pitch. You're sending one pitch this week, spending 1 hour on it, and accepting that a no costs you some discomfort, not your rent or your health. Limits don't make the action less real. They make repetition possible. That repetition matters more than intensity. A huge leap can feel clean because it lets you tell a good story about bravery, but it often leaves you too rattled or too busy to repeat the behavior. Use a weekly protocol instead. What? Publish one imperfect idea. Ask for direct feedback on one piece of work. Start one conversation you would normally postpone. Put a small amount of uncertainty on the calendar, often enough that it stops receiving a special invitation. Then, remove the exit ramps. The system breaks when discomfort appears and you still have instant access to a new plan, more research, another tool, or a cleaner version of the same task. Put a constraint in place. During the hour set aside for the exposure, you don't open a new document, change the scope, or search for a better method. You complete the one action you chose, or you sit with the urge to escape it. Very glamorous, very effective. Afterward, run a short review. Write down what felt hard, what actually happened, what broke, if anything broke, and what rule needs to change before the next round. Don't turn this into a diary of feelings. You're checking the system. Maybe the scope was too large. Maybe the gate was vague. Maybe the risk was fine, but you left too many exits open. Adjust one part, then repeat. Recovery belongs inside this protocol. Sleep, food, time off, and room to think aren't comfort traps when they help you face the next exposure with a working mind. The aim isn't a harder life. It's a life where discomfort stops choosing for you. Potential grows when you can meet manageable stress without fleeing back into planning, because action gives you the evidence planning can't. Choose one bounded exposure today. Set the rule that ships it, and do it before you improve the system again. If this reframed anything, subscribe. The next protocol covers how to restart after avoidance without turning the restart into another project.